Rudy Gobert has been careless in the locker room, touching other players and their belongings. Now a Jazz teammate has tested positive. Woj will be with us in just a moment. Brian Windhorst back here with us. Wendy, your response to the latest.
Rudy Gobert is a good guy. He's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. Just being playful. One of the things that I was told last night was that certain players on the Jazz were concerned, and I'm sure, by the way, with other teams, that when Rudy was sick earlier this week, they were encouraging him to get tested, and he was kind of joking about it. There were other players in the NBA last night who missed the game because of illness, and maybe they were just colds, but this is extraordinarily serious. We're going to have more NBA players who are getting mass testing across the league, who I expect to come down with this in the short-term future. And not to beat the horse again, but it is exactly the reason why other sporting events need to be shut down. Because the spread of this virus, we're only going to know until after. We're just now beginning to find out, and I'm afraid to say this is just the very tip of the iceberg.
It is definitely the tip of the iceberg. I got a text about 45 minutes ago about Donovan Mitchell, but obviously I'm here and I couldn't verify because I'm on the air, so Woj being Woj, he's going to find out. So props to him. Let's say this also. I think that you'll hear this as the day progresses. I just got a text from somebody. They said Donovan Mitchell had no symptoms whatsoever. Yeah. He was walking around looking perfectly fine, feeling perfectly fine. And obviously after getting tested, because all the Utah players were going to get tested after Rudy Gobert, who was walking around sick, this is what happened. Rudy Gobert didn't have any malice intent. He's not a bad guy. He is a very nice guy. But he was irresponsible because he was playing around and other people were not playing around. They didn't have that kind of mentality from what I was told. And he was making fun of them and fun of media members when he touched the tape recorders and the microphones and stuff like that. He was playing around because he didn't take it seriously. He meant no harm, but it was an irresponsible and a stupid thing for him to do. Having said all of that, here we are. And so now you've got a young star like Donovan Mitchell, and the key here is that he had no symptoms, according to what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, Max mentioned 5 to 14 days
exactly.
before symptoms even show. It's asymptomatic.
And that is why everybody should be on high alert. And that is why we should applaud the decision of the NBA. And that is why we should implore the NCAA. All college, all the conferences that are still having games and tournament games and all this stuff. That's why we should encourage everybody and implore everybody to put a pause on everything because you don't know what the hell's going on.
Wendy, you mentioned earlier in the show why leadership is important. The despicable turn of the phrase hoax, which was used at not only on disreputable news outlets, but by members of some of the highest levels of government, hoax, that sets the tone. And people think it's a joke. It's not real. But it's very real. And the issue here is that everyone takes it seriously because we all live together. And those who don't take it seriously, even Rudy Gobert, who's a good guy, but is joking around about it, spread coronavirus.
And this is an opportunity. This is very high profile. The entire country is seeing this. Yep. Let this be a lesson of how to proceed with everybody that you know and how to proceed. We talk about social distancing. That's a word I learned this week. Yeah. And it's now very important. Let what's going on with these public people be an education point. Let something good come out of this. Of course, the other sports team, but we're past that. Like, their idiocy will be shamed into the future. If they don't want to listen to what we're learning from what's happening in the NBA, allow yourself to listen.
Let's make sure we mention something to the common Joe out there who wants to go up to people, shaking their hands, giving them hugs, and all that. Yeah. This is not the time for that, people.
If the congressional doctor yesterday who said between 70 and 150 million people in this country will get it by his account, by his estimation, that's about a third of the country. Okay, and you want to slow that as much as possible. Right now, it was reported Tom Hanks self-reported and his wife both have coronavirus.
In Australia.
In Australia. Now we're hearing Donovan Mitchell after Rudy Gobert. Right now, we're still at the point where when we hear a celebrity has it, it makes news. Pretty soon, if the congressional doctor is correct, it will not be news when certain people get it anymore because so many people will have it. And The reason, if it feels like now, wait, what's going on in the NBA? So many, like Gobert and now there are more tests out. The issue is simply they have access to tests. The reason the number is still low, according to experts, is because there aren't many tests available. And the numbers are low simply because we're not all being tested, or the numbers would be much higher.
This has been on my mind since the top of the show when we were talking about the NCAA and our frustration with not suspending the tournament. And this just came to mind. Do you think their thought process, their sticking point in not finally going ahead and doing this is that we had a case here? We had Rudy Gobert test for the coronavirus, so the NBA decided to suspend the season, and we haven't had a positive test case from any of the college players. Is that what they're waiting for?
Let me tell you this. I guess anything's possible. But what you're asking us to do with that question is to consider giving the NCAA the benefit of the doubt. No one who knows sports is going to do that for the NCAA. You'll do it for the NBA. By the way, we've let, in this whole show thus far, we've let Major League Baseball off the hook. Why is there still spring training? Why are you still having games in spring training? For what?
I'm wondering if it's the same thing. They haven't had the positive test.
Again, you don't have to suspend the start of the season yet or anything like that. But you could suspend spring training right now. We haven't brought up Rob Manfred. We haven't brought up Major League Baseball. We should.
I want to ask Molly, when you asked that question, I'm curious. I agree. That's an interesting question to ask. But are you asking because once you have
that's why.
Once you have the positive test, that's a peg. Now you have an excuse to cancel, or do you mean that the leagues will try to make money right up till the last moment they can no longer do that?
That's what I didn't know if it was that kind of thing. Almost, yes, trying to push it away in like a naivete, like let's try to get away with it, have as many games as we can, make as much money as we can.
I think Molly's probably right.
Until we potentially have the positive, and then we have no choice. I'm just asking because I don't understand
That's fine, but let me try here. Here's where the NCAA they deserve no sympathy. You have institutions of higher learning that are sending students home. You have institutions of higher learning that have canceled their conference tournaments.
Yeah.
So the fact is, the very entities you are directly associated with, that you profit off of come March Madness, have taken preemptive measures to address this, and you're still dragging your feet. That is what. That's like the NBA. That's like one of the NBA teams coming out and saying, "I don't think we should be playing in the NBA."
March 12th
as a league.
It's 11 a.m. March 12th. There is a clarion call for leaders. If you're out there and you want to be a leader, now is the time. You don't want to wait for the NCAA? Have a team come up and say, "We're